In this video, we're going to cover how to add a machine to your system. So we're logged into the system. We're going to hit View. Settings, Machine Setup. I'm going to go ahead and add a new machine, and we're going to call this Sample Machine. Location is where this machine is located at. This is helpful for when you have multiple locations. Default setup in seconds is how many seconds it takes to set this machine up as the default. So for this one, we're gonna say 1800, which is 30 minutes. The efficiency is how much to reduce the efficiency by. So this will add to the time, allowing you to compensate for fatigue and things like that. The cost per hour in setup, so maybe you have a different labor rate setting the machine up. From what it costs to run the machine, so we'll put in something there. And then the how many people it takes to run the machine and any notes you want to add. Once you have these basic inputs put in, you'll hit Add Machine. You'll see it'll populate now with more inputs to add. I'm going to go through these now, but it's better to see it on in real time in action, so I'm going to go back to a different machine. And we've already covered the machine name, the setup efficiency, cost per hour, and setup cost per hour and run. The priority sensor. And show materials, we will cover in the video on the display screens. So that'll be in a different video. Requires cycle time. What this is when the employee goes to clock out of the job, so they will scan the barcode on the work order. It can either ask them how long did the runtime take. So maybe this here's a CNC mill, and maybe that operation took 2 minutes. So when they scanned out, they'll clock and they'll say, I've made 50 parts and it cut and it took me 2 minutes each of cycle time. Or if you select no, the system will calculate the time they clocked into the time that they clocked out, and it will use that as the total amount of labor and use the time each of how many pieces are reported divided into the total labor reported. So this custom right hand. So you see right here it says custom mill calc, and so we have written a custom script to be displayed on the right hand side. So this is the CNC mill. So I'm going to show you this custom mill count. So here's what the CNC mill is, and you see here's the custom mill count here. And what this customer had us do is be able to type in a tool diameter, how long the cut is, how wide the cut is, how deep the cut is. These were inputs they gave to us to help us create this form. And so when it calculates, it tells them that that would be 776 inches of distance, allowing them to put that in as an input over here in inches to mill. And so this custom mill count right hand, that's what it means for custom right hand. We can assist you in writing these custom right hand scripts for you if that's helpful. The custom bottom hand, I'm going to switch over to a different machine. This is a laser, and so the custom bottom hand is the custom laser speed chart. And so you can see here that here is the custom laser speed chart that we added to the bottom. So that bottom hand gives us the ability to add things at the bottom, and then you have this inline hand and you see that it says custom speeds P. Custom speeds, and you see the positions 8. That position lines up to what question? So question 8, inch per minute for cutting. And what it will do is it will replace the normal inputs driven by this, which we'll cover in a minute, with this custom inline hand. And so for this customer, they had us generate a selection chart that is able to select the speeds based on the type of material. So we see that that's in row 8, question 8, which is inches per minute for cutting. So we go over here, we see inches per minute for cutting right here. And so instead of being a normal input box, which would be typical, we have this in line and we wrote this for them. So they're able to select things easily that way. And so that's the inline, the quick pick seconds field. You see how that says 9. So seconds per hold pierce. This is question 9. Quick pick seconds. Seconds per hold, and you see it added all this. allowing you to quickly input these values into the field there. So that's what Quick Pick Seconds does, number of people we know, and we covered that earlier. If you set this as inactive, it will not be displayed in any of the lists. So like when you're setting up your engineering master, if it's set to inactive, it won't be seen in this list. And then output, what output does, if you select output, you can save the machine. And you'll see now you can download this machine. And that will download a zip file allowing you to come back over here, and you can import a machine allowing you to share those machines, and we have them available to send to you as well. I'm gonna go back to that machine. And then the notes, we covered what that does. So now I want to get into setting up the machine. And so let's go back over here to this mill. You see here that we have these questions that are set up load time. So in this load time, that's the question that be asked. So when we go over here to this machine, now let me show you how I got here. So here's the engineering master, and I wanted to add a quote. So I add the quote. Here's all the defaults, but once all the defaults have been displayed there, here's the load time. So that's the very first question I set up here to be asked, load time. And so that's the different questions. So you can notice load time, edge finding, vice clamps, holes to center, and see they line up over here. Edge finding, vice clamp, center drill, holes to tap. All of these are questions. The next field here is this default. What the default is that is the value that will automatically be filled in here. So load time, you see how it says 10? That was taken from here. Edge finding 0, so you come over here edge finding 0, and so it pulled that input in here. Now the default and secondary, the way these two work is your default will either be a quantity or seconds. When you do not have a secondary value filled in, this default is seconds. So in this situation, we're going to say load time is default of 10 seconds to load the part into the machine. There's no secondary value. But you see here where it says edge finding and we have a default and a secondary. So here, default is a numeric number, meaning how many times are you going to edge find, and each edge find is 10. So if I was over here on the quote and see here's edge finding, we see that the times 10, you can click that and it'll tell you that it comes from the secondary value. So that times 10 there came from right here. So if I was here and I say we're going to have to edge find 4 times, then it's going to this value for edge finding will be 4 times 10 of 40 seconds. So that's what the secondary does. So the default is a quantity or seconds. Secondary is always seconds. So this right here, load time will be 10 seconds. Edge finding will be a quantity times 10. Vice clamps, a quantity times 5. Seconds per hole, 5 seconds. Per hole drilling, 8 seconds. Seconds per hole tapping, 10 seconds. So these are the different ways they are set up. So the last one here is the helper. Or now we have the convert. Let me show you the convert. Convert. So here on question 7, you see it says inches to mil, and it doesn't have either input here, so it'll be a quantity. And what we have here is we selected yes to convert. And so you see here on row 7, which is inches to mil. And so I'm going to go back over here and you see inches to mil, and here's the conversion added to this field. So if I type in a number and then tell it to click that to convert it to millimeters, there you go. I can go back to inches. I can multiply it times 2. I can do math in this field and evaluate it. And so by adding this field here of this convert, it adds these buttons to that line. So here's inches to mil right here, and I told it to add the conversions. So the last thing to add for the questions is the helper text. And so you see here, question 3, vice clamps, and the helper text is how many vices to clamp. So you go over here, you got question 3, vice clamps. So just go back to this. You got a default of 1. Vice clamps, you have a default of 1. Your secondary is 5. So save the times 5. Convert is not set, so it doesn't have any of the buttons here showing. And then there's the help button showing because it has a value in the how many vices to clamp. So now that it has that value, I'm able to come over here and then I can click that and it shows what I typed into that help text for quoting purposes. Now once you have on your machine, you have put all of your questions in and you set up your defaults and your secondaries, whether you want to convert line, any of your helper text. This whole area here, all 50 of these, is a helper to get the questions here into this area. And so when you're done adding all of your questions in here, what you must do is you have to click this button, Add All Questions to the Fields. Now it's going to give you an alarm that says this is going to replace all the data down here. And that's okay because what we're doing is filling in all of the details for this stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit that, and you'll see I'll hit OK. And then what it did is it wrote all this into the fields area. It's important that once you get all the questions in, and after you add all questions to the fields, to save the machine. The reason you'll need to save the machine is when we get down here to adding some of these variables in, the machine all these questions need saved into this area for that to work. So I'm gonna hit Save Machine. So now we've saved this machine, and all the information is still there. Here's the area here, and we go back over here. I can refresh this, and everything is still here. So this is the machine we're setting up. So we want to be able to quote for a CNC mill. These are the questions that we're going to be asking. Now there's more fields that are available here. So I'm going to go to these other buttons. You have this button here where it says Get from another machine. There's instances where you want to copy a machine, but you need 2 different names for it, but it's the same field. And there's situations where that arises. And so let me show you this right here. So this ID of the mill is 76. So right there, it says machine ID 76. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here to our sample machine we made earlier. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to see I have no questions I'm putting in. But what I want to do is I want to get it from another machine. I want to get it from machine 76. You see it adds that. There's nothing here. Nothing here. I'm gonna save this machine. So you can see there's no questions typed in, and it just says get from another machine 76. And so machine 76, you can see how the numeric number on the end machine 76 is the mill. And so the mill has all of this information. So I'm going to go back over here to this engineering master, and I'm going to add the sample machine. So there it added to the master. Now when I hit add quote, look there. It looks just like the CNC mill. So what it did is just pulled everything in from the CNC mill. So that's a way that I was able to call it CNC mill and sample machine, but it all is driven by the information in the CNC mill. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for right now, and we're back here to this. Next thing I want to show you is let me go back to that sample machine. Show you the cost only. And so you can say that this is a cost only machine, and it costs you $500. So maybe you have a fixed cost, and it's for a process you do, and it's always $500. It doesn't matter if it's 1 part or 10 parts. So you can just tell it that it's a $500 cost, and there's no information to ask the quoter that's quoting the machine, so no questions. And there's no data in any of this, so I'll hit Save Machine. We'll go back over here. We'll add that sample machine. We'll quote it, and you see it says costs only $500. So when I save that quote, you see it amortizes that cost of $500. So now let me just show you in the quote here. When I look at the quote, you can see we're quoting 1, 5, 10, and 100 pieces. And so the $500 after margin is applied to it is $719 for one piece. So now that price of $100 is where the $500 is now amortized over 5 pieces, making it 100 each. With margin, you're gonna charge $143.88 and so on down like this. And so that's what cost only does. Again, I'm just gonna delete this for right now. We'll come back to it here in a minute. And so that's the cost only. So I'll get rid of that for right now. That's what the erase all fields does. It erases all the data here. I'm gonna save this machine. Let me go back over to the mill. And the next area that we have here is the extras. So what I want to show you here is a couple of things. So there are situations that arise to where maybe every time I enter this mill operation into my engineering master, I also want to add this deburr operation every time. I don't want to have to add a mill and then have to add the deburr. I want to add the mill and automatically add this deburr. So let me show you how we can do that. So if we go over here to the machines, we need to first find out what is the ID of the machine we want to add automatically after the mill. So we see the mill is ID 76. Deburr is ID 13. So I want to add deburr ID 13 automatically every time I add CNC Mail 76 to the work order. So I click on CNC 76. Now remember, deburr is 13. So I'm a click on this, I'm a view edit. And I'm gonna come down here to these extras and I'm gonna hit auto add next and it's gonna ask you for the ID. And when I type that, you see that added this auto add next 13. So I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna come back over here and you can see our engineering master here. And so it ends with deburr, so I'm gonna add CNC mill. And so when I add the CNC mill and I hit save, you're gonna see it added the mill and it added the deburr. So now I'm free to come in here and quote this portion by filling in the inputs and quote this portion by filling in the inputs. So you can see it added on both, and that's a very handy way to add a machine automatically after you add one. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that back off. We don't need that here for this demonstration. The next thing I want to show you is this button here in the extras that says order the questions. So if you notice, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it jumps to 27. So question 8 and question 27. So if you go up here and look, numerically, 9 is gonna follow 8, obviously, but I've told it to reorder this, and after 8, ask me 27. Okay? So after it asked me inches per minute, it's gonna say second inches to mill. Alright? So now if I go over here to the quote, you can see inches per minute, that's question 8. Second inches to mill, that's question 9. Or 27. And so you can see that the order has been dictated by this down here. This is handy because sometimes you'll put a machine in and then you'll come back and realize, no, I need another question asked here. And so, you can do that and then you can add that where to put that question in the list here by doing the reorder here. So that's what the order questions does. If you click the erase all extras, it'll get rid of everything in this value here. So that covers all of this here, what these question helpers are for, this area here, and the extras area here. Now we want to come to the evaluations part. Now to do that, I want to go back over to the sample machine. So we're gonna view and edit it, and you can see it. We have all of our default set up at the top here. We're not worried about the priority center and show on display yet. That's covered in a second video on the display screens. You can see we have nothing set up for questions, nothing set up down here. So what I want to do is I want to set this machine up just as a basic machine that's going to drill and tap parts. And so with the machine set up, what we're going to do is we are first going to ask questions to the person that's quoting it. So we want to ask them how many holes to drill. Okay. And we are going to say that by default, we don't drill any holes in the part. So the default answer is 0. But if we were to drill a hole, we're going to say it's going to take us 30 seconds per hole to drill. We don't need a convert line, and so we're not adding that. And then in case somebody wants to know what this means, we're going to say how many holes. Do you need to drill? So there's that question. Next question, holes to tap. And again, we don't normally tap holes, so we're going to say 0. And then we're going to say it's going to take us 60 seconds a hole if we were to tap. We're not going to add a conversion line. And this time, the helper text will how many holes do you need to tap in the part. All right. So now I've just added 2 basic questions here. Now remember, after I add in once I get done with the questions or after I change them, add to them, anything like that, I have to come down here and hit add all questions to the fields. I can click that button or this one, and you see that it's going to give me that alert and it added the 2 variables that we just add. So now that that's added, I want to save the machine. So now we can scroll back down and all of our information is saved and it's saved down here. So now the extras, we're not going to add any extras to this, but now what we have to do is we have to determine how to generate, how long is it going to take. And so we do that through math, and the math is done down here in these evaluations. So after I've saved the machine, I come down to these evaluations. And the very first thing I have to do is I have to take each one of these questions and set them up as variables. And so we have a handy drop-down list here. So you can see that question 1 holds the drill. I want to create a total variable for that. So I'm going to click this create total, and you can see that it just created a variable called total1, and what that is what the user inputs times that secondary value. So here's what the user is going to input, so it's going to default to 0, but whatever they input is going to multiply it times 30. Okay? And so that is variable 1, total_1. And we need to set that up for every one of ours. I'm going to create a total, so there's variable number 2. So now we have these 2 variables of total1 and total2. Now what we want to do is we want to accomplish what is the total. Part seconds each for the part we're quoting. So I need to know how many seconds it takes to make this part. Now on the machine over here, remember, all of these top ones from amortized cost up are always on every machine you're quoting. And so it will amortize the setup time and these different values over the run of the part. So if I'm quoting 1, it's going to add 1800 seconds of setup time. If I'm quoting 2, it would add 900 seconds of setup time to each one. And so these ones are always on it, but what we're asking is the additional part information to come up with this total time. So to do that, we have asked these questions, how many holes to drill and how many holes to tap. And then we came down here and we set up 2 different variables, total1, which equals what they input for, how many holes to drill times the secondary value we have set up. And here's number 2. And so now to get to the total seconds for the part, we're going to click this button part seconds each. We see that it equals. Now, this is standard math formulations with priority of parentheses, multiplication, division, and hitting this help button shows you the order. Okay. And so what I want to do is part seconds each is going to equal, I'm going to open parenthesis, and I want to add this total1. So I'm gonna go to this right here and say add total, and you see it just added that variable. And then I want to add variable 2. I want to close the parenthesis and always end it with the end of line so that I'll add a semicolon and down. I'm gonna go ahead and just take a couple lines out of here. And so we see here for this machine to calculate the total seconds to run it, what it is this variable 1, and variable 1 is what they input. Times that secondary value. And variable, and then they're gonna take that variable, and we're gonna add it to the second variable. So that second variable is what they input times the secondary value. So variable 1 is how many holes they drill times 30. Variable 2 is how many holes they trap times 60. We're going to have this total plus this total equal our part seconds each. And so this is a simple explanation of it. Can get very involved, and we're always here to help, and we have machines that are already done that you can use and you can tweak, such as all of these here and many more. As the time goes on, we continue to make more, not divulging any secret information for any customers or anything like that, but just the generic stuff. You would fill in your own setup for hours and those kind of costs. And when you're importing machines, you do not know who made it and where it came from. We do look at them and review them to make sure that the data looks correct and will proceed nicely. So with all this here, the machine is saved. So now that I've created this machine, let's go back over here to this engineering master. Let's add this new machine that we created called sample machine. So here it is. I want to add the quote, and look here. Holes to drill, 0 times 30. Holes to tap, 0 times 60. So I'm gonna say I want to drill 10 holes and 5 of them are tapped. I'm gonna save the quote. And notice we got 1885% efficiency, no amortized cost. So the amortized cost could be tooling. So let's say I'm gonna break some taps doing this part. So I'm gonna order $50 worth of taps. So if I put $50 worth of taps here, it would amortize that $50 over the cost of the entire quantity that you're quoting. So when I hit save quote, you can see it comes down here and there's your 30 minutes setup time. It's gonna take 11 minutes and 76 minutes, 11 minutes and 76 seconds. And so let's look at that. So 10 times 30 is 300 seconds. So if we take that. So if we go 5 times 60. Is 300 divided by 60 obviously is 5, and then 10 times 30. Divided by 60 is 5, so plus 5, that's 10 minutes total, but we're running an 85% efficiency. So there we go. So we've got our efficiency in there. So when we save the quote, we see we got our 1800. Remember the cost per setup, cost per hour run. And so there that is. So now when we go look at the quote, you'll see that it has added this price of the sample machine based off the inputs that we set up here. Based off of the price of the machine, efficiency rates, all those. We can see that. Here is the quote. There's a sample machine, and it will take there's 11 minutes to 76 seconds, 30 minutes to set up. So for one piece, this sample machine is going to cost the customer $88.86. For 100 pieces, $17.64. Again, you can look at the video how to quote a part and it'll explain this more, but all of this is taken in now and you get a final price. And now you can say net 30 quote. And when you look at the quote, here is the new price. And so that is how to create a machine. And to be able to add different machines for your company. Again, when you do these machines, you're gonna find that you can add just almost any kind of machine process where you're using time to calculate how much you're using math to figure out how much time it takes to run that work center.